Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. In this Nur al-Quran reflection series, we try to develop a connection with the Quran through both understanding and memorization. And in this video, in part A of this lesson, we'll go over the translation of the verses, some of the lessons and reflections, and we'll try to develop a visual memory of the pages and explain some of the unique and similar verses that help with memorization. And you'll find them all in the PDF file in the description below. This series is a translation of Ustadha Hiba Al-Agami's lessons, and I also use the lessons of Ustadha Taymiyyah Zubair, which I will link in the description below, inshallah, and you can use the timestamps in the description of this video to navigate and skip to specific ayahs if you need to. Okay, so this is quarter number 7 of Surat An-Nissaa out of 12 quarters. So we finished half of Surat An-Nissaa, and this is the beginning of the second half, which is quarter number 7, and this is the 37th of the Quran, and this is quarter number 5 of Juz 5 of the Quran. Okay, so this is the beginning of Al-Hizb al-Ashir, or the Hizb number 10, and it starts with أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم فما لكم في المنافقين فئتين. Okay, so here we have, this starts here on the left hand side of the page, and then we have the full page on the right hand side on the next page, and then about 2/3 or 3/4 of the left hand side page. So it's a little less than 3 pages. Okay, so if we talk about the topics here in the beginning, Ayahs 88 through 91, they talk about treating the hypocrites. We'll talk about the hypocrites or the munafiqeen. And then when we turn the page, these two long ayahs, the first one is especially long, they talk about intentional murder and accidental killing. So accidental killing first, and then intentional murder on the second ayah. And then these ayahs from 94 to 96, they talk about fighting or jihad. And then ayahs number 97 to 99, they talk about the people who stayed behind in Mecca and did not immigrate to Medina with the other Muslims. And okay, so let's start inshallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فما لكم في المنافقين فئتين والله أركسهم بما كسبوا. What is the matter with you that you are two groups concerning the hypocrites, while Allah has made them fall back into error and disbelief for what they earned? Okay, so here Surat An-Nissaa starts to talk about hypocrites, which is a matter that is not discussed in the Mekki surahs, the Meccan surahs, the surahs that were revealed in Mecca. Because Surat An-Nissaa is a Madani surah, it was revealed in Medina. And so the reason is there were no hypocrites in Mecca because there were no worldly gains that one can get out of being Muslim in Mecca. Actually, Muslims were persecuted. But in Medina, now that Muslims were a strong entity, there was a group of people who pretended to be Muslims or pretended to be allies of Muslims, but in reality they supported the enemies of Muslims and waged war against Muslims. So now Muslims differed in opinion regarding those hypocrites. One group of Muslims said that they should fight the hypocrites since they are waging war against Muslims, and another group of Muslims said that these people are Muslims, that they should be treated like Muslims, and since they claim to be Muslims. Okay, so in this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it clear that these people's actions show that they have fallen back into error and disbelief. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is not unjust to people. He sent those hypocrites astray because of what they did, because of what they earned. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَرْكَسَهُمْ بِمَا كَسَبُوا. He has made them fall back into error and disbelief for what they earned. He's not unjust to them. It's because of what they did, what they earned, because they insisted on the wrong path and they have no intention of repenting or correcting themselves. And so here Muslims, they were two groups. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, why are you two groups? These people have made themselves clear that they are against you, that they have fallen back into disbelief. They wish you would disbelieve as they disbelieved, so you would be alike. وَدُّوا لَوْ تَكْفُرُونَ كَمَا كَفَرُوا فَتَكُونُونَ سَوَاءً فَلَا تَتَّخِذُوا مِنْهُمْ أَوْلِيَاءَ حَتَّى يُهَاجِرُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. So do not take from among them allies until they emigrate for the cause of Allah. فَإِن تَوَلَّوْا فَخُذُوهُمْ وَاقْتُلُوهُمْ حَيْثُ وَجَدتُّمُوهُمْ وَلَا تَتَّخِذُوا مِنْهُمْ وَلِيًّا وَلَا نَصِيرًا. But if they turn away, which means they refuse, then seize them and kill them wherever you find them, and do not take from them any ally or helper. So here, فَخُذُوهُمْ وَقْتُلُوهُمْ حَيْثُ وَجَدْتُمُوهُم. It's important to see that وَجَدْتُمُوهُم, so اقْتُلُوهُم حَيْثُ وَجَدْتُمُوهُم, that's the only one in the Quran. So we have اقْتُلُوهُم حَيْثُ ثَقِفْتُمُوهُم. We had that in Surah Al-Baqarah once, and another time here on the same page here in Surat An-Nissaa. وَقْتُلُوهُمْ حَيْثُ ثَقِفْتُمُوهُم. So those are the two ثَقِفْتُمُوهُم, and one in the middle is وَجَدْتُمُوهُم, and that's the only one, that's the unique one. And so here we can see that here, this is what is mentioned here is that we need to first know that Muslims in Mecca, they were ordered to do hijrah or migration to Medina. And this was a must for Muslims. It was an order from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But some Muslims did not migrate. So, of course, after the conquest of Mecca, the ruling changed, and now Muslims are not required to migrate to Medina. That would be impractical and impossible. And so these ayahs here, they discuss that specific situation of when there were people who were Muslims, but they did not migrate to Medina, they were in Mecca. Okay, so those people there were different types of those people. So they're going to be discussed here in these ayahs. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that except for those who take refuge with the people between yourselves and whom is a treaty, or those who come to you, their hearts strained at the prospect of fighting you or fighting their own people. So we have here two types of two groups that are an exception. We are actually going to talk about three exceptions to this rule. So the rule is that you fight those people because they are hypocrites. They show that they're Muslims, but they aren't. But then there are three exceptions here that we're going to talk about, because first, إِلَّا الَّذِينَ يَصِلُونَ إِلَىٰ قَوْمٍ بَيْنَكُمْ وَبَيْنَهُمْ مِيثَاقٌ. So that is number one. Okay, so those who take refuge with the people between yourselves and whom is a treaty. So that's the first group. أَوْ جَاءُكُمْ حَصِرَتْ صُدُورُهُم أَن يُقَاتِلُوكُمْ أَوْ يُقَاتِلُوا قَوْمَهُم. So their hearts strained at the prospect of fighting you or fighting their own people. And if Allah had willed, He could have given them power over you, and they would have fought you. So if they remove themselves from you and do not fight you and offer you peace, then Allah has not made for you a cause for fighting against them. وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ لَسَلَّطَهُمْ عَلَيْكُمْ فَلَقَاتَلُوكُمْ فَإِنْ اعْتَزَلُوكُمْ فَلَمْ يُقَاتِلُوكُمْ وَأَلْقَوْا إِلَيْكُمُ السَّلَمَ فَمَا جَعَلَ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ عَلَيْهِمْ سَبِيلًا. So just see that أَلْقَوْا إِلَيْكُمُ السَّلَمَ, that can get a bit confusing, because you have here وَأَلْقَوْا إِلَيْكُمُ السَّلَمَ, and then here وَيُلْقُوا إِلَيْكُمُ السَّلَمَ, and then on the next page, inshallah, we also see لِمَنْ أَلْقَى إِلَيْكُمُ السَّلَامَ. Here it says salam with an alif. So keep that in mind. And also فَخُذُوهُمْ وَقْتُلُوهُم حَيْثُ وَجَدْتُمُوهُم and حَيْثُ ثَقِفْتُمُوهُم, those two can get confusing. But then the second one is ثَقِفْتُمُوهُم, like the one in Surah Al-Baqarah, as we mentioned. Okay, so back to these groups of people, the second group. So we'll talk about the next ayah, and then we'll summarize these three groups, inshallah. Okay, ستجدون آخرين يريدون أن يأمنوكم ويأمنوا قومهم كلما ردوا إلى الفتنة أركسوا فيها فإن لم يعتزلوكم ويلقوا إليكم السلم ويكفوا أيديهم فخذوهم وقتلوهم حيث ثقفتموهم. So you'll find others who wish to obtain security from you and to obtain security from their people. So they're hypocrites. Every time they are returned to the influence of disbelief, they fall back into it. فإن لم يعتزلوكم ويلقوا إليكم السلم, so if they do not withdraw from you or offer you peace, ويكفوا أيديهم, or restrain their hands, فخذوهم وقتلوهم حيث ثقفتموهم, then seize them and kill them wherever you overtake them, which means in battle. وأولئكم جعلنا لكم عليهم سلطانا مبينا, and those we have made for you against them a clear authorization. Okay, so here we see that there are three situations in which Muslims who did not migrate to Medina should not be fought. If they live in a tribe with which there is a treaty with Muslims, because treaties, they have to be respected, they have to be fulfilled. So if that's the situation, then that has to be respected. So that's number one. And two, if they are forced to come out in battle against Muslims, but they are neutrals, they do not want to fight the Muslims and they choose not to fight the Muslims, they remove themselves from you and offer you peace. So this is what the ayah says here. If they remove themselves from you and do not fight you and offer you peace, then those people, there is no cause for fighting against them. So that's number two. And then number three, if they are hypocrites, they are double-faced, they wish, as the ayah says, they wish to obtain security from you and obtain security from their people. So they tell you that they're with you, and they tell their people that they're with them as well. And so those people, they are hypocrites, right? But even those people, if they are if they come out to fight the Muslims, they come out to fight the Muslims for worldly gains, but then they withdraw, they offer peace or restrain their hands, then the Muslims should not fight them again. So only if they do not stop, then this is when you fight them, okay? And those we have made for you against them a clear authorization. Okay, وَمَا كَانَ لِمُؤْمِنٍ أَن يَقْتُلَ مُؤْمِنًا إِلَّا خَطَأً. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to talk about accidental killing. And never is it for a believer to kill a believer except by mistake. It's not befitting for a Muslim to kill another Muslim, to kill another believer. وَمَنْ يَقْتُلْ مُؤْمِنًا خَطَأً فَتَحْرِيرُ رَقَبَةٍ مُؤْمِنَةٍ وَدِيَةٌ مُسَلَّمَةٌ إِلَى أَهْلِهِ إِلَّا أَنْ يَصَّدَّقُوا. And whoever kills a believer by mistake, then the freeing of a believing slave and a compensation payment, which is a diyah, presented to his family, the deceased's family, is required, unless they give up their right as charity. So here, the punishment of intentional murder was given in Surat Al-Baqarah, Ayahs 178 to 179, which is qisas, right? That's the punishment for intentional murder. But the punishment for accidental killing, that is given here. It is important to understand that if someone kills someone, whether intentional or accidental, two types of rights have been violated. There is the right of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the right of that person who was killed, the deceased, the one who was murdered, right? So freeing of a slave, that is for the right of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that was violated. And the compensation money is for the right of the person who was killed. So if the person is not able to find a slave, as we will see here, then they have to fast for 2 consecutive months. And that's for the right of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we will see here that تَحْرِيرُ رَقَبَةٍ مُؤْمِنَةٍ, which is freeing of a slave, is mentioned 3 times in this ayah. And diyah musallama, the diyah is the compensation payment or the blood payment. Musallama means presented or given to, handed over to the family. And that is mentioned twice, okay? And we'll see that the order is going to change depending on the situation. There's 3 types of situations here, right? So the first one, وَمَنْ قَتَلَ مُؤْمِنًا خَطَأً فَتَحْرِيرُ رَقَبَةٍ مُؤْمِنٍ. If someone kills someone by mistake, it was an accident, then they free a believing slave and give a compensation payment. The compensation payment is 100 camels or the equivalent of that, okay? So that's number 1. فَإِنْ كَانَ مِنْ قَوْمٍ عَدُوٍ لَكُمْ وَهُوَ مُؤْمِنٌ فَتَحْرِيرُ رَقَبَةٍ مُؤْمِنَةٍ. So if that person, if he, the deceased, was from a people at war with you and he was a believer, then only the freeing of a believing slave. So that's because this person is from the enemy, so it doesn't make sense to give the enemy money. They'll use it to fight the Muslims, okay? وإن كان من قوم بينكم وبينهم ميثاق فدية مسلمة إلى أهله وتحرير رقبة مؤمنة. But the third situation, if he was from a people with whom you have a treaty, then a compensation payment presented to his family and the freeing of a believing slave. So here we'll see that in the beginning, Allah's right is mentioned first, تحرير رقبة مؤمنة, and then the right of the deceased, ودية مسلم. And then in the last situation, when there is a treaty, and the right of those people, the deceased, is mentioned first, and then تحرير رقبة مؤمنة. فَمَنْ لَمْ يَجِدْ فَصِيَامُ شَهْرَيْنِ مُتَتَابِعَيْنِ تَوْبَةً مِنَ اللَّهِ. And whoever does not find one or cannot afford to buy one, then instead a fast for 2 months consecutively, seeking acceptance of repentance from Allah. وَكَانَ اللَّهُ عَلِيمًا حَكِيمًا. Allah is ever knowing and wise. وَمَنْ يَقْتُلْ مُؤْمِنًا مُتَعَمِّدًا فَجَزَاؤُهُ جَهَنَّمُ خَالِدًا فِيهَا. But whoever kills a believer intentionally, his recompense is hell, wherein he will abide eternally. وَغَضِبَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَلَعْنَهُ. And Allah has become angry with him and has cursed him. وَأَعَدَّ لَهُ عَذَابًا عَظِيمًا. And has prepared for him a great punishment. And the scholars have said that is for the person who has killed someone and has no remorse, does not feel guilty about any of that, is not repenting. They think that this was the right thing to do. يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا ضربتم في سبيل الله فتبينوا. O you who have believed, when you go forth to fight in the cause of Allah, investigate. So يا أيها الذين آمنوا here, this is number 6 of 9, and we talked about 9 calls to the believers in Surat An-Nissaa. وَلَا تَقُولُوا لِمَنْ أَلْقَى إِلَيْكُمُ السَّلَامَ لَسْتَ مُؤْمِنًا. And do not say to one who gives you a greeting of peace, you are not a believer. تَبْتَغُونَ عَرَضَ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا, aspiring for the goods of worldly life. فَعِنْدَ اللَّهِ مَغَانِمُ كَثِيرًا, for with Allah are many acquisitions. كَذَلِكَ كُنْتُم مِّن قَبْلُ فَمَنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَيْكُمْ فَتَبَيَّنُوا. You yourselves were like that before, then Allah conferred His favor, which is guidance, upon you. So investigate. إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ خَبِيرًا. Indeed, Allah is ever with what you do acquainted. In this ayah, Muslim soldiers are reminded that they are fighting for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not for worldly gains. They should not be impulsive. They should not fight to get war booty, for example, or any worldly gain. They should not be bloodthirsty. So war in the end is a means for achieving peace and not for creating more corruption or more problems or for killing innocent people. So the ayah was revealed because there was a group of Muslims who encountered a man and they thought that this man was an enemy. And the man said, Assalamu alaikum, which means he was saying that he's a Muslim and he's not an enemy. And this group of Muslims thought that he was lying. They said he's just saying that to avoid us. And so they still killed him anyway. And they went back to the Prophet ﷺ, and so this ayah was revealed. It was revealed to remind Muslims to keep their intention pure for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to do things for Him, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We need to do things the way Allah desires, the way He desires them to be, not to follow our own desires or our own whims. We cannot be impulsive or to just kill out of being impulsive. We need to take time to investigate and understand the situation before taking any action that has such grave consequences as fighting. It is also a reminder here when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, كَذَلِكَ كُنْتُم مِّن قَبْلُ, you yourselves were like that before. فَمَنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَيْكُمْ, then Allah conferred His favor upon you. It's a reminder not to judge others. It's a reminder to have empathy with other people. That person you are judging, you were in a similar situation like them before. You were not always the best Muslim. Once upon a time you were like that person, or you were not always the best person. Remember Allah's favor upon you. Whatever good you're in, just remember that it is Allah's favor upon you. فَمَنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَيْكُمْ فَتَبَيَّنُوا. So it's important to take time to investigate. فتبينوا. Okay. لا يستوي القاعدون من المؤمنين غير أولي الضرر والمجاهدون في سبيل الله بأموالهم وأنفسهم. Not equal are those believers remaining at home other than the disabled, and the mujahideen who strive and fight in the cause of Allah with their wealth and their lives. So this ayah was revealed because Abdullah ibn Maktoum, he was one of the companions and he was blind, he was disabled, he was not able to go out in battle, and he truly wanted to go out with the Muslims. And if someone truly wants to do something and he has a genuine excuse, then he truly wants to do something good but cannot do it because of a genuine excuse, and that person is written عند Allah that as if that person has actually done that good deed. Okay, so this ayah was revealed for that. So other than the disabled, the other people remaining at home, they are not the same as the mujahideen who strive in the cause of Allah with their wealth and their lives. فضل الله المجاهدين بأموالهم وأنفسهم على القاعدين درجة. Allah has preferred the mujahideen through their wealth and their lives over those who remain behind by degrees. وَكُلًّا وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الْحُسْنَى, and to all, which means to both, Allah has promised the best reward. وَفَضَّلَ اللَّهُ الْمُجَاهِدِينَ عَلَى الْقَاعِدِينَ أَجْرًا عَظِيمًا, but Allah has preferred the mujahideen over those who remain behind with a great reward. And you can see here that فَضَّلَ اللَّهُ was mentioned several times, right? فَضَّلَ اللَّهُ الْمُجَاهِدِينَ وَفَضَّلَ اللَّهُ الْمُجَاهِدِينَ. It was repeated here, right? درجات منه ومغفرة ورحمة, degrees of high position from Him and forgiveness and mercy. وَكَانَ اللَّهُ غَفُورًا رَحِيمًا, and Allah is ever forgiving and merciful. So this وَكَانَ اللَّهُ غَفُورًا رَحِيمًا, this is the first time of 3 as an ending of an ayah that we'll see here in Surat An-Nissaa. So we'll have 2 more inshallah. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ, that's the 3rd time of 7 as the beginning of an ayah. And إِنَّ الَّذِينَ تَوَفَّاهُمْ, so the word تَوَفَّاهُم, this is unique. We'll see in Surah An-Nahl twice we'll have تَتَوَفَّاهُم الْمَلَائِكَةُ, but here it's the only تَوَفَّاهُم الْمَلَائِكَةُ. Okay. إن الذين توفاهم الملائكة ظالمي أنفسهم قالوا فيما كنتم. Indeed, those whom the angels take in death while wronging themselves, the angels will say, in what condition were you? قالوا كنا مستضعفين في الأرض. They will say, we were oppressed in the land. قالوا ألم تكن أرض الله واسعة فتهاجروا فيها. They will say, the angels will say, was not the earth of Allah spacious enough for you to emigrate therein? فأولئك مأواهم جهنم وساءت مصيرا. For those their refuge is hell, and evil it is as a destination. Okay, so there were Muslims who stayed behind in Mecca while they were able to migrate to Medina. So if someone is making up an excuse or just trying to portray something as an excuse, right? This also applies to us. Remember that the excuses that we make will not be accepted. We sometimes say the problem is our culture, the problem is our family, the problem is our employer or our country. And so just know that these excuses, they are not going to be accepted. If you cannot practice your religion and follow the rulings of your religion, just move somewhere else. You don't have to stay in that place. There are many options in the world. So you don't have to stay in a place that forces you or coerces you to not practice your religion or do something against your religion. But there is an exception here. إلا المستضعفين من الرجال والنساء والولدان لا يستطيعون حيلة ولا يهتدون سبيلا, except for the oppressed among men, women, and children who cannot devise a plan, nor are they directed to a way. There is an exception. There are people, for example, Muslims in China, for example, the Uyghur Muslims, right? فأولئك عسى الله أن يعفو عنهم. For those it is expected that Allah will pardon them, and Allah is ever pardoning and forgiving. وَكَانَ اللَّهُ عَفُوًّا غَفُورًا. فَأُولَئِكَ, this is the only one in the Quran that has فَأُولَئِكَ in the beginning of an ayah. Okay, so let's go over the similarities, the unique ayahs first. So we said that وَجَدْتُمُوهُم, that's only here in Surat An-Nissaa, قُتُلُوهُم حَيْثُ وَجَدْتُمُوهُم. In Surat Al-Baqarah it was وَقْتُلُوهُم حَيْثُ ثَقِفْتُمُوهُم, and then again in Surat An-Nissaa فَخُذُوهُم وَقْتُلُوهُم حَيْثُ ثَقِفْتُمُوهُم on the same page. وَأُولَئِكُمْ is an exception. It's only here in Surat An-Nissaa, and also once again in Surat Al-Qamar. أَكُفَّارُكُمْ خَيْرٌ مِّنْ أُولَئِكُمْ, and that's the only أُولَئِكُمْ with a meme in the end, not أُولَئِكَ. Okay, إن الذين توفاهم, that's only here. We have تتوفاهم, we'll see it in Surah An-Nahl inshallah. فأولئك عسى الله أن يعفو عنهم. فأولئك, that's the only one in the Quran with a fa at the beginning of an ayah. ومن يضلل الله فلن تجد له سبيلا. This is twice. We had one here and then we'll find another one later inshallah. Ayah 143. يا أيها الذين آمنوا, this was mentioned 9 times, and this here is number 6. So let's look at that table that we had in a quarter before in a previous lesson. So the one that we have here is يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا ضربتم في سبيل الله فتبينوا, which is in the quarter of فما لكم في المنافقين. وكان الله غفورا رحيما, that's 3 times. We had one of them here, and then إن الذين 7 times. Here it's إن الذين توفاهم الملائكة. We have one of them here. فأولئك, that's the only فأولئك. The other ones are أولئك. أولئك الذين لعنهم الله. So we have that 5 times. But the only one with the fa is an exception in the whole Quran. It's here in Surah An-Nissaa with a fa. The other ones, there are 4 other times without the fa here in Surah An-Nissaa. أولئك الذين لعنهم الله أولئك الذين يعلم الله ما في قلوبهم. And then later inshallah we'll have 2 more that we'll talk about inshallah. And Jazakallah khair, and don't forget part B of this series inshallah. Jazakallah khair.